Hey everybody, Riot Mortdog here, and Happy New Year. It's time for patches to resume, and yeah, we're back. So first thing to note is TFT has moved to a different naming convention for their patches. Now that we're separate from League as far as like the naming goes here, because they're doing their seasons thing, we have our own naming convention. It's very easy. We are the 13th set. This is the third patch, TFT patch 13.3. That's it. So moving forward, that's how you can expect our patch naming to go. This is patch TFT 13.3. Second thing to note is because this is the new year, we just got back, so we had to do this via micro patch, which means all of the patch changes we did were pretty much limited to like enable, disable, or number changes, very slight things. There aren't many bug fixes, and there aren't many like any reworks or text changes, things like that. Those will have to come in the next patch in 13.4. That being said, because we have so much content in this game, it still ended up being a pretty big patch. So there's a lot to get into. Let's dive right in and get this going. First off, on the carousel, we've decided that the stage 3 carousel, showing up and having it be 6 cloaks, 2 armors, and a bow, not very fun. So we finally budged on this, and now we're going to have it be the same as stage 2 and 4 carousel. It works exactly the same now. There will always be one of each component, unless it's the like spatula frying pan thing, but generally you can expect that there's going to be a tier or a sword or whatever you need, and so if you're in last place, hopefully you'll be able to get it. So yeah. And then secondly, the opening encounter. The set's been out for a while now. You guys all know how it works. We're speeding that up a bit to get you into the game quicker, because playing more TFT is very fun. Let's go. All right, on the trait side, 6 Artillerist, which requires 2 emblems, still isn't quite worth the payoff when you hit it. So we're changing how many attacks you need to proc the missile from 4 to 3. Pretty big buff. Hopefully this gets 6 Artillerist where we want it to be. Automata, definitely the thing that has kind of dominated as far as emblems go. You were always happy to get an Automata emblem because the 4-piece early was very good, and then the 6-piece late was insane. So we are going to nerf how tanky it is. The 4-piece is going to go from 60 to 55, and the 6-piece getting a really chunky nerf from 140 back to 100. That being said, we want to focus on bringing back the damage part of it. You should be excited when you get those 20 stacks and it fires, not just because you have 140 armor and MR. So we are going to buff the damage of 6 a little bit. That being said, I could see in future patches the damage even going higher, but that's kind of how it works for now. So this is meant to be a nerf overall. Automata should be weaker overall. Scrap is really, really close. We don't want to buff the shield amount or anything like that. It's really close. Some champions getting some love, but the shield duration, we launched at 30. That was too much. We put it back to 20. It's close. We're going to try 24 here. So that way the backline still gets a little bit more value out of that shield. Should help it out a bit. And then the 9-piece is going to get a small buff here. It is a, one of those chase traits, 2 emblems, a rumble, stuff like that. So it's going to get buffed from 60 to 65 per component. And then finally, Sorcerer here. I'll be real. Sorcerer's in rough shape. It needs more that we can do in a micro patch. It's probably going to get a bigger change in 13.4. But for now, there's no harm in cranking up the number to try to help it out a bit. So 4-piece is going to go from 50 to 55, 6 from 95 to 105, and 8 from 110 to 150. Very large buff. Gonna be honest here, I still don't think it makes it viable, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong here. And so we'll see how this plays out. And then, there's some number where they do enough damage that they blow everything up so fast that it doesn't matter. That being said, I don't think this is it, so we'll see. But do want to try to at least, if you decide to play it, you're not as punished, And then Chem Baron. Chem Baron's in an awkward state. Right now we're discussing what we want to do with this trait, if there's any bigger changes. But for now, what we're looking at is if you have an emblem and you have a really good start and you get the cash out, it's insane and unsurmountable. The win rates of the augments, the win rate of some of these items is an unacceptably high level. So we do have to bring that down. That being said, we could see a world in a future patch where we remove the emblem completely. So we are at least discussing that just to keep you up to date. But for now, we're going to do a very light nerf to the 400 cash out. The 400 cash out is only going to lose stuff that you'll barely notice, where it's like, oh, you don't get a Silco with your items, or you don't get a Savika with your items. But generally, you're still like the items aren't really changing at 400, so 400 got to like slap on the wrist. 500 is where the big nerf is. 500, you're going to lose quite a bit of the value here. The stuff like, hey, no 2 Savikas to go with it, or no 2-star Silco to go with it, and you're still going to get those perfected items. So the value is going to go down quite a bit. And then in addition, 7 of the 8 perfected items are getting nerfed. Now, these aren't like Omega kill the item nerfs, but they're definitely like the item's not going to auto win anymore nerfs. So you can see here, destabilized chem tank, less HP and armor. Executioner's chain blade, less AD, less durability and damage amp. Piltover hex armor, less armor and MR. And the cooldown, how often you can proc that AoE explosion, getting cut in half. Shimmer Bloom, the heal and shield goes down, as well as how often you can give the buff away. Unleash Toxins, the AP goes from 45 to 30. The stun duration down to 0.5. Realistically, I think the stun needs to go away from this item. Just be the wave and the damage. But for now, this is what we could do. And then the damage goes down a bit. Virulent Virus, less AP, less true damage, less damage reduction, less zombie health. And then Voltaic Saber, less Omnivamp, and more damage instances to proc it. So all of these items going down in power. That being said, and before anyone's like, oh, I still see Shimmer or Chem Baron winning games, I think it's still going to win games. I think in the right hands, it will still win games. We're still going to see it go, do well, especially if you get 600 cash out. But this is a nerf. Like, you're going to see less winning. You're going to see the win rate go down a lot. That's the intention. So we'll see how it plays out. But like I said, we don't consider our work done here. This is sort of the stopgap for the next 2 weeks. All right, on the champ side, Powder 1 and 2, kind of disappointing, kind of holding back Scrap early, kind of forcing Family into a loss streak spot. Doesn't really help Ambusher much. So Powder 1 and 2, the fall off damage of the AoE explosion is going to get buffed back to what it should be. She might need more than this, but going light for now. Cool. Singed. This is meant to be the Renata comp nerf, the biggest part of the Renata comp nerf. Singed, I was wrong on Singed. I thought he was going to be worse than he ended up. Turns out he's quite good. In fact, the best, considering he's a 1 cost and you can get him early, and then you 4-star him sometimes. His durability was pretty wild, not to mention the attack speed he granted. So he is going to have to get brought down to be, he's supposed to be worse than Leona and Rel and Loris. Right now he's not. And so he's getting a pretty big nerf here. Spell durability going from 50-50, 55-60 to 45-45, 50-50. So yeah, especially 4-star Singed. Very big nerf to 4-star Singed. All right, Steb and Trundle, you're going to see a few tanks get like mana buffs. We just want more of the tanks to be viable and exciting here. So stuff like Steb and Trundle, they're getting their mana cost reduced. This also helps their hero augment, which needed some help. So they should be a little more fun tanks to open up with. And then Zyra. Zyra's pretty hard to get working. She had Sorcerer trait, which was rough. Experiment, which can be hard to get into. Just kind of worse than a lot of the other 1-cost AP options. So she gets a small buff here. I think this will make Zyra openers pretty good, actually. So don't sleep on Zyra next patch. She's thorny. All right, Camille. The last patch, the nerfs hurt Camille. Now she's not quite as good as she should be. Time to slowly bring her back up. The idea here is like a Camille 2 and a Nocturne 2 should be about as equally exciting if you get them on like 2-1. They're not. And so Camille is going to do more damage, mostly at 1 and 2-star here. 3-star is only a minor buff. We can't go too ham and buff too many parts of Enforcer and Ambusher, as you'll see later. But for now, this should help her out a little bit. Leona, much like Steb and Trundle, gets a mana cost reduction to help her be a little tankier. This should help. Not that Academy needs the help, but early Academy will get some help here, which is already good. So Academy openers I'd expect to be very good next patch. But also like a 6 Sentinel line that rerolls and plays around Leona should be better instead of Singed. Renata, actually pretty happy with where Renata is. As I mentioned, we're already hitting that comp with the Singed nerf. That being said, the shielding is just a little over, just a little. So at 2-star, it's getting a tiny nerf. And at 3-star in particular, getting about a 10% shielding nerf. So a little less shielding from Renata, but damage-wise, we're happy with her. We like that comp. We're not trying to kill that comp. Zeri still continues to be in an awkward spot, getting some more base AD, hopefully opening up some Firelight options if you want to try reroll Zeri, play around Watcher, get an emblem, stuff like that. And then Ziggs ended up being just a little too good, better than Cassiopeia. So the mini bomb damage, we're going to undo the buff from last patch. He still has the main bomb buff, so he still does a lot of damage. Just a little less on the splash, a little less randomly killing your backline. 3 costs. Cassiopeia, as I mentioned, kind of worse than Ziggs. So going to get some attack speed to get her casting more frequently, stacking up that Dominator, getting her big part of her spell. So this should help Cassiopeia feel like a 3 cost, not a 2 cost. Melee Gangplank, similar story. Kind of hasn't really been standout. You know, if you have a Violet 2 or a Gangplank 1, the Violet 2 feels so much better. This is to try to help undo that. Gangplank should feel good as a melee unit, especially if you have good items on him. So the spell heal's going up quite a bit here. This is a lot of spell heal, and the spell damage up a bit. So I think an early Gangplank with like 2 Form Swapper going to be very good, or some Pit Fighter. So don't sleep on Gangplank melee now. I think he's going to be quite good next patch. Loris, poor Loris. I wish this guy deserved better in the show and deserves better now. I wish he was tankier than he is. We're giving him a pretty big spell shield buff. I'm hoping this makes him good early. I still think Loris 3 won't be good enough, but we'll see. But also can't buff Enforcer too much. So going light for now. My guess is he needs a little more. We'll see though. But I'm hoping Loris out of a box will actually be pretty tanky now. Smeech. I love it when I Smeech all over the place. Unfortunately, Smeech doesn't Smeech hard enough, so we're going to help him Smeech out a little bit more by increasing or lowering his mana cost so he can Smeech more often, doing more damage, jumping around, Smeeching everybody. Should be good. And then finally, Twisted Fate. Same thing. We can't buff too much of Enforcer all at the same time, but like Loris TF reroll should be a thing, should be a comp that exists. It really doesn't, so TF's going to get a damage buff to both yellow and red card here. All right, Echo. Echo is another 4 cost that, like, he exists. Sometimes you, like, put him in, kind of, but you're not really excited by him. So this mana cost should hopefully help him cast more often. It's a pretty big buff. You know, put some Hodges on him, Edge of Night, get him to cast a bunch, heal a bunch, cast more, do a lot more damage. So this should make Echo a lot more threatening and make Firelight comps something you could play around. Elise backline. It's a silly comp. It can work, but it's really hard to play. You don't see much of it in high elo. So Elise going to get a 10% buff to the backline here. Obviously, she's still got way more utility frontline. I don't expect this to like radically shift things, but if you find yourself in a position like a 6 bruiser comp and you need a backline, Elise should feel more worth it. And then Twitch. Twitch is in a weird spot where like the capped out Twitch boards can do very well, but it's really hard to get him there. You need a lot of frontline to buy him the time to get his spell off. His mana cost is really high. So we're giving him a pretty big buff here by lowering the mana cost to 40, which means he'll get to that state where he's pew-pewing all over the place. And so this should help Twitch be not as much of a comp that requires a high roll, and something that like an early Twitch can actually be pretty threatening. That's the hope here. So Twitch, hopefully on the same page as like Corki after this. 5 costs. Okay, big nerf here we have to talk about. Jace is... Okay, what would happen is he would cast... Like, let's say you put the gem in the front line. The gem dies, and then Jace casts his spell. The gem appears and gives the buff. That was never the intent. The intent was, if gem alive, give buff, else summon gem. Now it works that way. So if you want the buff from Jace, whether it be the attack speed or the shield, you need to keep the gem alive. This is a nerf. This is a big nerf. Like, you know, you're not going to get like free attack speed from backline Jace all the time, or you're not getting a free shield from frontline. So this is a nerf to Jace, but now it works the way you'd expect and the way that was intended. To compensate, though, frontline Jace is just kind of underperforming. Pretty much everyone goes backline Jace. He's just that much better. So frontline Jace getting a pretty big buff here. He's going to hit his main target quite a bit harder here, almost a 20% buff on that main target, and a small buff to the side. Anything it passes through will also take some damage. So hopefully frontline Jace can be kind of scary. LeBlanc. LeBlanc is she's in a good spot. She's really, really close. But the time it takes for her, once she casts her spell, to get those 3 empowered auto attacks out is a little too long. So we're raising her base attack speed to help her get those out, get back to casting, and hopefully help her out a little bit. And then finally, Malzahar. Malzahar in our data is kind of the worst performing. Going very light on the buffs here. We don't need to go back to the launch patch. That's not the goal. But he's going to do, +1 on his tick damage, which is most of his damage. And then the wave is going to hit a little bit harder. The wave isn't much of his damage anyway, but at least it'll help him maybe chew through some frontline a little bit. So hopefully this gets Malzahar up to the other 5 costs, and you can be excited about hitting him early. And then finally, 6 costs. Post the change where, the 6 cost appearance rate is where we want it. We're happy with the appearance rate of 6 costs. We're not happy with the payoff, though. They're not as strong as we want them, and they're not strong enough in the right places. So let's start with Mel. Mel, you're like happy to get her casting and Banished Mage and Cheese out of placement, but like if you have a blue buff on a Heimer 1 or a Mel 1, the Heimer's better, and that's not okay. Mel's supposed to be the equivalent of like a 2-star 4 cost. You should be excited when you have items for her and see her crank out some damage. That's kind of the point. So Mel's going to get a pretty big buff here to her damage at both 1 and 2-star. More than a 10% buff here, so she should be able to do more damage, which is good. Warwick is similar. His experiment bonus, kind of not great. So if you decide to put him in the experiment hex, which usually you want to, it's exciting to put your 6 cost on the hex. Or at least now maybe you'll get some stuns. He's also going to heal more, which will help him stay alive, and up his damage in Blood Frenzy. So again, these champs should feel exciting to get. Right now they feel okay to get. A little bit of a change here. Now, the last one here is Victor. Victor is obviously currently the most popular 6 cost. We want to do bigger changes to Victor because right now he's too much utility to just throw in a comp. So the Shred and Sunder need to go. But you put items on him, it doesn't actually feel that good. It feels pretty bad. So we're probably going to shift that in the next patch. As I mentioned, we're kind of can't do much here with a micro patch. But just calling it out here that Victor, we're not like super thrilled with him. We just can't do much right now. So there you go. All right, items. Short thing here is a couple less built items getting a buff here. Deathblade, damage jump goes up by 2%. Even Shroud, the armor and MR won't fall off quite so fast, so it can actually be a tank item for a bit. Ionic Spark, 50 more health, so you don't feel like you're losing a tank item slot just to have an Ionic Spark. And then Hurricane, always a weird item. It's not a bad item, but certainly no one's excited to build it right now. I love building it when you get the augment. I think it's quite good, but there you go. That's going to be a buff to Hurricane. And then we have artifacts. Artifacts are something that we're going to have to keep adjusting our frameworks on like where they want to be. But for now, we do have to hit kind of the outliers. Fishbones, we know about Fishbones Nocturne. It's going to lose 20% of its AD, but gain 10% attack speed. This is also so like if you want to end up putting it on a champion who benefits from AP, it won't feel as wasted. And it should like, Nocturne scales well with AD. So this is overall a nerf to the item for like Nocturne, but kind of neutral for the item. Gambler's Blade, a little too good, especially on Kog'Maw. Gambler's Blade is going to lose 10% base AS. Rapid Fire Cannon, similar. Good on Mordekaiser. Nocturne, it's going to lose some AS. Silvermere Dawn, really, really close, but still a little too good. Minus 10 armor and MR. Collector, minus 5 AD. Mostly, all that Shimmer's nerf kind of going on there. And then Trenchcoat. Trenchcoat, we have more work to do. Right now, Trenchcoat is a really unhealthy item in that it's a check of like, do you have the other items it interacts with in a gross way? Do you have a Zanya's, an Edge of Night, a Sterix, or the Ascension Gem? If so, enjoy your like +2 placements. If not, it's okay. So for now, we're going to nerf it pretty hard, but let it be known that we do feel like we have more work to do here. So for now, the break apart point is going to go up pretty dramatically here from 50% to 66%, and the clones will have less health. This is a pretty big nerf to the item. I don't know if the item will still be bad in those cases where you have like Zanya's and stuff. It might still be good. If you don't have those, I expect it to be a pretty bad item though. This is meant to be a pretty big nerf for now until we have a better solution. But the item will be worse, which is good. It's frustrating. All right, augments. Aurelia carry augment. She gets more attack speed. Sweet. That should be more fun augment. It's not bad by any means. We even saw it win at Macau, but it could use some more love. Dumbify. This is a minor change. This isn't going to change much when you have an 8,000 health dummy. Having it go from 8,000 to 8,250 to 8,500. Who cares? So now it'll at least go from 8,000 to 9,000 to 10,000. It'll scale up a little bit better. Still kind of a mediocre augment, but there you go. Glass Cannon, the minus 20% health for backline was too punishing. Now it's only 10%. Kingslayer, this is a weird augment, really hard to play, but when you do, it should be worth it. So now if you beat somebody that has more health than you, you're going to get 5 gold, which is pretty solid for a silver augment. So Lost Streak into this augment can do some cool stuff. Lone Hero. Yeah, definitely didn't get any DMs about this one all Christmas break. We're disabling Lone Hero. The idea of the augment was sound, of like, hey, your Ambessa is the final one alive and they make a comeback. In execution, trying to get it onto a specific unit was really hard, and the only time you could do it was with specific builds that ended up being very toxic and very unfun, and then combine that with Lux's monolock issue or Vladimir. Like, I don't think we want you having a silver augment that says lock your Vladimir 3 in a corner until you have 3 Archangels build up. Like, this is just not a healthy play pattern. And even if we could do stuff like change the attack speed and lower the durability, it's too hard to play. So for now, it's gone. I don't expect this augment to come back anytime soon. It just, even when it's good, it's not good. So yeah. Survivor, pretty fun augment. Pretty risky though, and the risk isn't quite worth the payoff. So 10 more gold there. Cool. Team building, get that second duplicator 2 turns earlier. Sweet. And trolling, the Trundle hero augment. He already got the mana buff, which is good. And he'll get a little bit more attack speed because trolling is fun. Enjoy Trundle. Gold augments. Another anomaly is a really fun augment, but kind of underperforming. So we're going to put more base stats on the item, just so that when you lose an item slot, you don't feel quite as bad. 100 more health, 5 more AD, 5 more AP. Arcane Retribution. This augment asks you to put all your sorcerers in the front line except one so that they explode and do 400 damage. Yeah, not a great augment, so this one's gone. Just really awkward design, so yeah. Cloning Facility, underperforming a bit, kind of like the Mirror Artifact we had to buff, so the clones will get 10% more health and 10% less mana reduction. I think this augment's going to be great now for win streaking. If you have a strong 2-star champion on 2-1, take this augment. I think it's going to be really good. Contested. This augment's weird. If you look in our data, the augment looks fine. But what I will say is having an augment that sort of prays that a bunch of people also played Rel or Aurelia, or Draven, so that you can get 4 gold a turn, which is OP, or sometimes an insane high roll 6 gold a turn, kind of unhealthy. So we just don't really like the pattern this created. So we're just going to disable it. It does a lot of the same things other augments do, but in a weirder, more complicated, and less healthy way. So, yeah. Vlad Hero Augment, 3 mana, goes to 5 mana per auto, so Vlad should be casting a lot more often. Should synergize him more with the items we want him to be synergized with, like something like Ginsu's. Family Crest, small nerf here, no longer grants a Violet. That augment is really good. Being able to hit 4 family early is very powerful. Still will be. Forward Thinking, we're giving it 10 more gold. I love this augment. This augment's really fun if you're in the right spot for it, but pretty hard to make work. We also know there's another change that needs to happen, which is when you have 100 gold coming to you, it takes forever. We're going to try to speed that up in a future patch, but for now, plus 10 gold. Glass Cannon 2, same change as Glass Cannon 1. Golemify, same change as the dummy one, but it needs it less because Golemify is actually decent. Moonlight, underperforming a bit, gain more AD and AP. One for All, overperforming a bit, a little bit less damage amp per 1 cost. Overheal, underperforming a bit, gets some more bonus damage. Paint the Town Blue, this thing generates so much value. The difference in a Rebel comp with and without this is pretty wild. Early it's really hard to beat this augment, so it's getting nerfed. Superstars, this should be red, not green. This is a nerf. This is going to be different. You can see I was making this in a hurry, by the way. This slide's a little off. Too much value. What this should say is 2 cost granted goes from 2 to 4. So too much value is getting buffed. Superstars is getting nerfed. And then finally, Warpath. Warpath is going to grant 1 less 5 cost, but a full item instead. The trade-off is worth it. Warpath is a fun augment. Just want to make sure the value is good. So getting 2 full items out of it should feel a lot better than just the 1 plus the gold. Prismatic. Exalted Adventure. Light change here. Instead of a duplicator now and every stage, it's just the next 3 stages. So total duplicators, a little less, and 1 less early on. Anger issues. This is probably the last buff it's going to get. If it's still garbage after this, we'll probably just remove it. But it's a big buff. 10 more armor and MR per Ginsu's, and another 0.5 AD and AP per stack. If it's not good now, it's never going to be good. So, okay, Artifactory. Let's talk about this one. Right now, we like that artifacts are strong. We like that when you get one artifact, like a Fishbones Nocturne or a Trench Coat, you know, or a Wits End Kog'Maw, you're like, sweet, good stuff. The problem is when all of a sudden you start getting 2 artifacts, 3 artifacts, 4 artifacts, it starts to get out of control. And we like that, like, those create really exciting high moments, but we want those to be rare, right? Like a game where you start with Jace and then get Portable Forge. Cool, I got 2, that's neat. Or, you know, you got a loot subscription and you happen to get a game where there were 2 of them in there. Cool. But a single augment that says, here's 10 is too much. We're going to put a pretty big lasso, like we're going to stop how often you can get tons and tons of artifacts. Living Forge is probably the new cap, right? Living Forge gives you 3 artifacts in a game. That's a lot, but it's good. We'll probably never go higher than that though. So don't expect Artifactory to come back. Don't expect What the Forge to come back. It's just, it puts us in a position where we have to keep gutting the artifacts for this. So we want to keep artifacts fun. To do that, we can't give you 10 of them. This is the trade-off. So Artifactory is gone. I know people are going to be like, oh, but you're taking away the fun. The point is to keep them fun for the most cases, not just a single artifact. Because I don't want to have to nerf them 10 times over because this exists. So Belt Overflow, a little more health per belt. If you're a bruiser player, enjoy. Bronze for Life. I know the challenger players will rant and rave about this augment and how good it is. It looks decent. It doesn't look insane. So we went with the light buff here, less durability per trait, but it makes really fun comps. Like, we want this augment to be good. So, but yeah, right now our data doesn't match how anecdotally hyperbolic people are being about it, but for now, light nerf. Build-A-Bud, 2 more gold, minor buff. Calculated enhancement, 5 more AD, 10 more AP. Should make this better. Dark Alley dealings, same thing as Artifactory. We just don't need that many artifacts. It's going away. Expected unexpectedness. This augment needs to be fun, like Call to Chaos, and right now it's underpowered and not as fun. Hitting 7 rerolls on 2/1 feels so bad. We're upping that to 10. Hitting 2 4 costs or 2 5 costs feels really, like, it's just below the bar for a prismatic, so it's getting a pretty sizable buff here. 10 rerolls at least. 3-star 4 cost, 3-star 5 cost. If it needs more than this, we'll give it. But yeah. Family Crown no longer grants a Violet and Evander. Cool. Flurry of Blows, more crit chance. Great. Ghosts of Units Pass. This is probably the last change this augment will get. Otherwise, it might get cut because it's still a weird pattern. But obviously, it was insane. Now it's kind of bad. So we're trying to get it to good here. So HP per stack goes up by 1. AD per stack is now 1. Also just makes it nicer to look at. Subscription service gives you 2 more gold, help you afford those 4 costs. So you're not just econ starved for the rest of the game. Sword Overflow, the AS per sword goes up by 0.5. Same with Wand Overflow, so those get helped. Trait Geniuses, the Echo and Heimer one. This gets a buff here, and hopefully with the Echo buff makes this pretty good. And then Void Swarm, this one's weird. I'm not a fan of Void Swarm, but at least now you'll get it every 10 turns instead of every 11, which felt weird and it's really hard to get to the 3rd one. So, yeah. And then Anomalies. Generally, the idea with Anomalies is we nerfed a couple at the top, we buffed a bunch at the bottom. They're actually looking pretty good balance-wise. It's close, but especially some of the more niche ones needed some love. So, Arcana Overwhelming, 15 armor and MR. As well as the MR to AP conversion goes higher. So this should hopefully open up some cool builds. Avalanche of Armor, 20 more armor. Berserker Rage will now activate much sooner, so you don't have to go so low to get that triple bonus. Center of the Universe, more damage. We've got some bugs to fix with this one as well, but hopefully Center of the Universe can actually pump out some damage early. Defense Expert, more armor and MR. Energy Absorption, more AP per ally death. Laser Eyes. If Laser Eyes is ever going to be good, this is going to help. This is a 33% buff. Hopefully something like a Rumble with Laser Eyes can be pretty scary. Mini-Me's, this is also a pretty scary buff. Will now proc every 2 attacks instead of every 3. This is a massive buff for this. Keep an eye on Mini-Me's. If I had one I'm nervous about, it's this one. So we'll see if this ends up being really good on like an AD champion. Nothing wasted. If this is going to stick around, we'll see. But on ally death, gain 80 mana is not okay. So this is going to get nerfed a bit. So now sometimes it'll be on ally death, gain like 10 mana though, which could be pretty bad. So we'll see. Repulsor, 5 more attack speed. Slime Time, more AP per proc. Ultimate Hero, it's still good with a 3-turn delay. Now it's got a 4-turn delay. We'll see. And then Wolf Familiars, they'll do more damage. And finally, to wrap it up, we fixed a typo with several of the outcomes with Wind Up Monkey. Scavenger could no longer rarely give you Radiant items. Finally fixed the last case where Hard Commit could give an emblem when it shouldn't. And then lastly, because of when we did the whole evolved layer, Vander wasn't properly in there, so there were no Vander encounters. So Vander encounter is back and now at the proper rate. So I know some of you don't like Vander, some of you do, but he'll be back. So there you go. Like I said, we have so much content that even when you try to keep the patch small, it ends up very big. This feels like a very big patch, but all the changes themselves are pretty minor. I don't expect radical meta shifts from this. That's not the goal. The goal is a few more lines playable, stuff like TF, Enforcer a little bit more reliably, Firelight, Scrap, Echo, Ambusher, stuff like that. But we'll see. And then, like I said, 13.4 is where you'll get some more of the number changes, text changes, any reworks we need and stuff like that. So there you go. All right. Happy 2025, the first patch of many. We got a lot to do. So hopefully you guys are enjoying Into the Arcane and having fun. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.